Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Civil War Regiments Podcast. I'm here in studio once again, and my brother is joining me once again.
Thank
my
you for
brother
having
Joey.
me.
Yeah,
Thank you.
glad
you
you're
once again.
here.
Thank you
And
very
maybe
much.
those of you watching can see some of the props on set to hint at what we're going to be talking about today. If you remember, a few months ago, I had my brother on for a special anniversary tribute episode for Gettysburg 160th in July, and I thought, well, we should do something similar for Chickamauga because this is a Chickamauga 160th, and both of us have a lot of sentimental connections. Chickamauga has been a favorite battlefield of ours over many years, and but I thought, well, we should just come on and chat about our experiences with Chickamauga, how we feel about it, some of our favorite memories there, and some of our favorite aspects of the battle and whatnot. So this is just another opportunity to chit chat about Chickamauga, pretty much.
Second, really kind of, I don't know how people work with statistics, but Chickamauga has got to be certainly the second kind of after Gettysburg. I mean, it's up there with important battles. I mean, Chickamauga is kind of like the Gettysburg of the West, or of the Gettysburg of the South. Gettysburg is up in Pennsylvania, while this one is down here, closer to us, closer down south, which is really nice. That it's been kind of in our backwoods growing up, being only a couple hours away, while Gettysburg is a whole trip out of it. But I mean, we've made several, day trips, just Saturday day trips to Chickamauga, which is, and it's, still hasn't really, sunk in, still hasn't really, hit me how much, like, we're making these just Saturday trip up to Chickamauga, just a couple hours drive away, but to a major battlefield. It's like you get that feeling that when you're going to Gettysburg, like, man, you're going to Gettysburg and and all that. But it's like you don't get that feeling when you're going up to Chickamauga. Of course, because of the nostalgia and everything. It's not like Gettysburg, but in a lot of ways it is like Gettysburg. I mean, it's a massive battlefield with lots of monuments, tons of beautiful monuments, and this big battlefield that's really kind of quiet to itself. Of course, not counting the whole Chattanooga battlefield, which is is kind of spread around
well, yeah, it's unique in its own right, and it's a very pivotal campaign and battle. And Chickamauga and Chattanooga are rolled together, and for the official records of many things, those campaigns are all bulked into one big campaign.
I got brain tied. What's the name of that? I was trying to think. What's the name of the hill or Chattanooga or Missionary Ridge? Is that it?
Yeah, well, Missionary Ridge.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Missionary Ridge. That's the name I was thinking of. I was thinking of Chattanooga and then parts of that battlefield and Missionary Ridge battlefield. That's what I was thinking of. I couldn't think of the name.
Oh, yeah, and as everyone knows, it's all one national park, Chickamauga and Chattanooga National Military Park, and so it is kind of scattered around, and it's been confusing for me before in my own research because they're all lumped together, like even the records of the monuments that are located there, like some of the monuments, on paper are not actually at the Chickamauga battlefield. They could be in other locations in Chattanooga and Missionary Ridge, the Sherman Preservation. There's Orchard Knob. Like, there's so many different areas. Lookout Mountain, Missionary Ridge, Orchard Knob, that I haven't even been to all the locations. I've only been to Lookout Mountain. I've only been to
there's some cool stuff
point parts for that.
There's some cool stuff that's spread around.
It's just easier. Chickamauga is easier because it's all there and it's all kind of grouped together, and it's, again, not to make comparisons all the time, but like we were saying, and we mentioned before in another episode about how our back in the day, it all started. Our Gettysburg fix was let's go to Chickamauga. It's 2 hours away, but it's amazing to have such a huge battle not that far away. 2.5, 3 hours, probably more for us, but we're 3 hours from like everything, which is funny to me.
Yeah,
from where we are. But like Atlanta stuff, Chickamauga, Chattanooga, like we're 3 hours and everything. But it's amazing, yeah. And I remember I was actually refreshing myself on a lot of things. I was remarking earlier, I had a rough night trying to sleep last night, and at one point I was like, I'm just going to watch something, and I found an old episode of the Civil War Combat series on History Channel, had an episode on Chickamauga. I love that series. I used to love watching that series. You know, I know a lot of people watch Civil War Journal, but for me it was Civil War Combat, and they only did a few episodes. I think there was only 8 or 10 altogether, but I saw the Chickamauga episode, and which, fun fact, I was looking at the credits afterwards, and they filmed it at the Daniel Lady Farm in Gettysburg. So the Chickamauga episode of Civil War Combat was filmed at Gettysburg. So
how about that?
Which I was wondering, as I was watching it, I was like, oh, yeah, I wonder if they filmed this at the battlefield or anything, but they filmed it at Gettysburg. So.
Are you going to film a video about Chickamauga? We're going to go to Gettysburg.
Oh, yeah. Which they may have filmed the whole series up there, probably. So, but
it's a good place to film it.
But you know, one thing I remembered watching the episode, you know, of course, I hadn't watched it in years, and because if you go to the battlefield now, you know, there's a newer one that they made. I say newer, but they made that newer film that I think that was around 10 years ago now that they did that. We know a lot of people that are in it too. A lot of reenactors we know are in it. So every time you watch it,
we've seen it.
Recognize everybody. I've seen it a million times. But this one, the History Channel Civil War Combat episode is comparable to that. It's very similar the way it's made. But I'll never forget though when I saw that episode. Again, I talked about another time where I saw a Civil War Combat episode on Cold Harbor, and it introduced me to the heavy artillery units that I had never heard of before, and I looked more into that. Likewise, when I saw the Chickamauga episode, they spent a lot of time talking about John T. Wilder and Wilder's Lightning Brigade, which, as you know, was that mounted brigade in the Army of the Cumberland that was armed with repeating rifles, and the first such full like brigade outfitted like this, and very cool. I should have put their book. I have the history. I forget who wrote that book.
It's there in spirit,
but it's right back over here in the library.
Yeah, I know it's close.
But I love it. They're fascinating to hear about, and as we, you know, to set the stage a little bit, you know, as always, you know, like we focus on the battle itself sometimes, but you know, this was a broader campaign. You know, this lasted, you know, first he had the whole Tullahoma campaign in Tennessee, and which was a very successful campaign for the Union, cleaning out Tennessee, fighting their way towards Chattanooga and fighting for all the gaps. And you have that one fight at Hoover's Gap, which is memorable one, where that's where Wilder's Lightning Brigade that's where they earn their name, basically. And that's where they gain their reputation. And I've been through there. I got to go through. I mean, it's right on the interstate. And if you pull off, there's a little park right there. There's a few monuments there. There's a cemetery there. And actually, my book, Civil War Regiments, those of you that might be familiar with this, the latter half of the book is the history I put together of the 20th Tennessee Infantry. And I'm trying to see. I'm looking for my chapter on Hoover's Gap that I put in here. And so, unfortunately, the 20th Tennessee, they were part of one of the best brigades in the Army of Tennessee, which was William Bates Brigade. A lot of famous regiments in that brigade, and but they had the misfortune of going against the Lightning Brigade at Hoover's Gap, and they kind of got beat up. This was June, you know, late June 1863, but they took some June 24th to be exact. I'm trying to see. I know they, Base Brigade went into action and they lost 150 of the 650 men engaged, while Wilder only lost 63 men.
Dang.
But Wilder was able to fend them off, and that's where the reputation was gained there. And but it's worth a visit if you ever go. I think it's that's I-24, right? It's I-24 from Chattanooga towards Nashville. That's where look it up. But if you just look up Hoover's Gap Battlefield, it's like right off the interstate, and it's worth a little visit there.
Yeah,
but,
well, that really earned him something, because I just read too that is, of course, the Lightning Brigade monument is the largest monument on the battlefield of Chickamauga. The tower.
Well, yeah, the Wilder Tower,
the castle tower that's dedicated to him. So of course they get.
Which part of that is because after the war he came and became mayor of Chattanooga, right?
Something, yeah. That sounds well.
I have to fact check my.
That has to be a fact check. If that's him or someone that knew him.
Yeah, he was mayor.
Okay. So there we go.
Yeah,
he built a castle,
which that's funny.
Built a castle on the battlefield.
Interesting guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's also interesting about Chickamauga as a whole, and as the battle, as the climax of a campaign, sort of the climax, if you want to put it that way. But how the way that I look at it, when I mentioned how Chickamauga is like the Gettysburg of the South, or Gettysburg of the West, because you're going, usually they're put east and west theaters. So Chickamauga is kind of like the Gettysburg of the West.
What's the largest battle?
Right.
Like Gettysburg was the largest battle. This is the largest battle. Okay.
Learning when I went to the battlefield just last summer was really the big turnaround that I learned a lot from. I learned a lot more about Chickamauga. I started watching American Battlefield Trust. They made some great videos highlighting the battlefield. They made them in winter, with Mr. Ogden, and all of them went there to do those live, filmings of the battlefield, which was very helpful for the battlefield. And last year we took a trip that we can talk more about later, and I got in a good book that I had learned a lot more about. And like I said, watching American Battlefield Trust, learning more about the battlefield, and the more and more that I learned and read about it, is how much I can make comparisons between that and Gettysburg. How very similar these battles are, with the Union cavalry starting off the battlefield by stumbling into skirmishing, and then all the forces slowly converging on each other in this kind of climax of a campaign.
The traditional battles begin by circumstance,
and so these circumstances are so similar, and then all of a sudden they're so unsurety, and it's like, oh, both armies are forming up, and we form this long line that kind of looks like a reverse fish hook. Most of the battle, if you watch the animated battle map, it kind of looks like a reverse fish hook. And you've got the Lafayette Road, the straight road, just like the Emmitsburg Road that's running straight down the battlefield, and it's this point of it's like the line of splitting the mark between Confederate and Union side. Just like it, you go down Emmitsburg Road, Gettysburg. You just drive down that road, and you've got all the stuff to your right, to your left. Lafayette Road, you drive down straight, and you've got all the stuff to your right and to your left.
And of course, you have all these fields, and you have all these woods.
Right.
And,
of course, the Kelly Field, which is like the wheat field, basically.
It's like there's the Brock Field, the Poe Field, the Kelly Field,
the Vineyard Field,
and all
Vineyard,
of them, these
hotly.
And I've probably camped in each of them at one point or another. But it was actually Lee White, a famous ranger from Chickamauga, that was on the documentary I was watching earlier, where he mentioned at the time of the battle, these woods were fairly open. So it wasn't like it was this thick undergrowth. Now when you go, it's just like it's covered up, but it was open woods. But at the same time, when the battle starts, it turns into the smoky haze chaos, and like men, brigades, regiments just literally stumbling into each other. And I got a good impression of that with it was actually a video game. It was that Ultimate General strategy game. It was like Ultimate General Civil War, and they have a Chickamauga scenario on there. And the way it starts, whatever side you're portraying, like you start off with like the one brigade, one unit, and you have your objective, like the real battle. But like as you go, then you stumble into an enemy brigade here, and all of a sudden another enemy unit shows up, and then you have a reinforcement, and like you get a vibe of the chaos, and like all of a sudden this brigade comes out of the woods to my left, or I get bombarded over here from my right, and it kind of, that game just gave you an idea of the chaos of the real
Absolute
battle.
Chaos, my goodness.
And that's
totally chaotic.
To me, that's what I was always intimidated by Chickamauga, because I even have the big battle map, the table size battle map in there. Should have laid that out. But I was always, it's not as clear cut in some regards as some battles. We're so used to like, again, to say if you look at the Gettysburg map, every corps, every brigade, every division is pretty much exactly where they're at, and they fought the whole battle exactly where they're at. There's not this much. There was, but there was fewer piecemeal movements and around. It did happen, but at Chickamauga, it became all cohesion, and it was kind of like every gap was plugged by, it could be a random regiment from another brigade, and a brigade from one corps here fighting right next to a brigade from another corps, and it became this chaotic, it was just guys were pulling whoever they could anywhere. And
it's like to go ahead, I don't want to cut you off, but
my last point to kind of wrap up is, you have you have these video games and depictions that can kind of show it accurately, and so this weekend I'm going to the national anniversary reenactment, and I went to the 150th, and I went to the 145th before that, and now I'm going to the 160th. But in every case, though, like most of the battle, because it's a public event for spectators and whatnot, so. But like we always end up fighting the Battle of Chickamauga in a wide open field, and it's almost like it just becomes, generic Civil War battle, and which is cool for the numbers and all that. But like, I want to get that real chaotic, wild feeling from Chickamauga, which I compared. Chickamauga is also the version of the Battle of the Wilderness in Virginia. Mm-hmm. It's very similar to that in that regard, where you could compare it to the Wilderness in Virginia, Chickamauga being a very chaotic battle like that.
So it's like the battlefield, as you said, was intimidating and confusing at first, but after learning the ins and outs
when
of
you
it,
dive into it,
you really understand how it is kind of like all the other battlefields, because when you familiarize yourself with the farm, with the different fields, it's confusing at first, but you really see, you can your brain can make that mark of where everything happens in the direction of the battlefield. When you go down into it in like regimental scale, it can get even more confusing because of guys getting pulled, like you said, from all over the place. At one point of the battle, of course, Rosecrans had to basically put in his last reserve and switch out all these guys to plug holes, which ended up saving the line momentarily. We're here talking with knowing that most people listening have a general knowledge of the Battle of Chickamauga already. And, of course, we're not going to go through a whole explanation of everything that happened with the Battle of Chickamauga, which you can encourage, if you're listening, to go and learn. And I'd say American Battlefield Trust, that would be a good place to go to learn about the entire battle, about how it unfolded and everything, and facts about the battle. And be a great place to start, or get some good books that we can recommend. But being that we're just discovering it in general, I ask you what is the most interesting thing about Chickamauga, the Battle of Chickamauga, since we're near the anniversary right now. What is the most interesting part of this battle to you? Specific people? It can be multiple things. It can be like your three most interesting parts of the battle. Something interesting that interests you particularly.
Oh, yeah. There's a few points. And again, I already mentioned the fact Wilder's Lightning Brigade's involvement is a very rare, unique part of this campaign. But then there's a lot of elements too that I kind of forget, even in my own research. It's just how with the fall of Vicksburg, Chattanooga becomes, in the West, Chattanooga becomes everybody's target. Chattanooga becomes the key. Now that Vicksburg has fallen, so that's why the Confederates are sending this SOS. Where, I mean, Rosecrans, that was probably one of the highlights of the Army of the Cumberland's career, was what they were able to accomplish, kicking the Confederates out of Tennessee, and they were kind of busting their butt there leading up to Chickamauga. But then the tables get turned drastically, where an SOS, if you will, was sent out to any available troops to join Bragg to retake Chattanooga. And all of a sudden you have all these troops from everywhere. You have troops left over from Mississippi coming over.
And don't they get? Is this when Longstreet and Hood come down?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm getting to.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean that's
okay.
That's one of the biggest facts to me that sticks out in this campaign, is the fact that not only is this the biggest battle of the West versus Gettysburg, in the East, they're only a few months apart, and troops that fought in Gettysburg are fighting at Chickamauga.
That's crazy.
So Longstreet's corps, with the exception of Pickett's division, so Pickett stays behind, but Hood's division and McLaw's divisions come down. And by train, all the way down there, and then and for them to not only partake in the battle, they really partake in the second, or I know technically third day, right? Which today, the anniversary today, the 20th, is when the breakthrough happened on September 20th. We're recording on September 20th today, and Longstreet's corps is the part of the group that breaks the line and goes through.
Does Hood get blown up at that point? Did he get blown up earlier of the battle, or did he? How long did he last?
Didn't he? I think he got.
Did he
wounded.
last longer than Gettysburg? Because I know that's the.
Well, I mean, I think it was very similar, because he was wounded not long after the advance of Gettysburg, and I think the same thing happened in Chickamauga.
He's like, dang it!
Like, I think he got hit. I could be wrong, but I think he got hit early on when they first started the advance.
It's a big year for those guys to do Gettysburg and then come down and do Chickamauga in just a couple months apart. I mean, what a time for all those guys.
And even though it was short-lived, to have such a overwhelming victory, at Chickamauga for the Confederacy, it's like, yeah. So again, for the Confederacy, you lose on the 4th of July, you lose Gettysburg and Vicksburg. But then a few months later, you have this big victory at Chickamauga. And again, they weren't able to retake Chattanooga. They weren't able to, they besieged it, but nothing really ended up coming out of it. All we remembers is when Grant shows up to Chattanooga a few months later and kicks butt there, and it becomes this massive Union victory. And so that's why it's short-lived, so it's amazing that the Confederates were able to put together such a big army like that in a short amount of time. And so you had all these guys from different backgrounds. All of a sudden, you had guys that were in coastal operations, guys from Mississippi, guys from Virginia, all clumping together with the Army of Tennessee to fight this battle. And so, it's also confusing because, you have to get used to working with these people, because there was that mentality where the A and V guys felt like, well, we're the hardened veteran. We've been fighting a real war, not you guys. But then the Army of Tennessee guys are like, I don't know what you guys are doing in Virginia, but we've been doing all the hardcore fighting here. Because you think of the guys that have been through Shiloh, been through Stones River, been through Vicksburg, and now on to Chickamauga. They have pride on their belts, just like the guys who survived Gettysburg and Antietam and everything else that showed up down here. So all of them are hardened veterans at this point. But that sticks out, their involvement, Longstreet's involvement here. But it also, I don't think, I think one of the most famous last stands, if you will, during the Civil War is that stand on Snodgrass Hill and Horseshoe Ridge and everything,
Well,
and where the Rock of Chickamauga earned his name, George Thomas, and even the drummer boy of Chickamauga.
You got me. That's exactly the most interesting part of the battle for me. That's exactly what I was going to say, is just the climax of that battle. Well, on Snodgrass Hill, of course. Well, more like Horseshoe Ridge, to be exact. That's if I have the name right. That the way that they the way Thomas comes in and puts everyone in place to finish off that battle and get everyone out is just, for military textbooks and military guys, I mean, it's just a really, really impressive feat for him to do that, to just come in. I mean, the man is like a rock. Even if you look at him, you get he's a rock. It's really incredible. And my favorite part about that whole last stand, the most interesting thing to me, and I think the most important part, is the last stand, if you will, of the 21st, 89th Ohio, and then the 22nd Michigan, the three regiments that were left, the last ones out that did not get out, that were overwhelmed, and most of them were captured and, wounded, and those few that did make it out alive. Those last three units, which have great monuments on Horseshoe Ridge, that whole clearing, that patch of ground up there is beautiful. All the lining of the monuments, you have beautiful monuments right there, that spot, and it's a really important place, where they have the 22nd Michigan and the 21st Ohio and 89th Ohio all on the line there, all next to each other. And that's the most important takeaway of the battlefield, is just their kind of last stand, whether it was miscommunication from when they were taking turns, getting out of the battlefield, whether it was miscommunication of when they needed to get out, or if they were standing there holding the line intentionally. I'm not sure myself, but either way, you've got them standing ground and getting completely overwhelmed, which is, of course, is really honorable feat that those guys, that they took basically the whole brunt of the Confederate forces, doing the pincer on them. And that's really the most impressive and probably my favorite point of the whole battlefield. Well,
that's my favorite part to visit too.
It is a really cool place to visit. Of course, the Tiger Monument up there.
Yeah, the 125th line.
Yeah, that monument is
Old Green Eye.
So cool. That monument is so cool. Everything up there is so cool. But it to me, I was going to save this until we talked about points of the battlefield that we like.
Yeah, we'll get into.
But I'll mention it now that Snodgrass. I'll mention it now. We can go more in depth later. Snodgrass Hill, I feel like, is missing a large equestrian monument of Thomas.
Yeah.
With guys down at his feet, kind of maybe some guys like forming a defense around him, guys kind of like patching up stuff. Like that would make such an epic monument.
A monument almost like Lee's monument at Gettysburg.
Yes, something like that.
Thomas mounted up there, and then the bottom bas relief is the man like forming breastworks.
Right. That would
putting a defense.
That would be something perfect.
Which there's some really good monuments up there.
The second part. So I'll mention that. We'll get into points of the battlefield in a minute here. But my second thing that I just remembered that is a must mention for favorite or interesting things about the battlefield, cannot leave out, is Hans Hegg.
Well, that's what I was waiting to bring up.
You were waiting to bring that. Okay, yeah. You're waiting. You see, we're both mentioning the thing we're about to mention. You take it away.
I was gonna a shameless plug again. So my book, this is the first one I did a few years ago, the Civil War Regiments, which honestly, it's an accumulation of some of my favorite articles, and then all the articles that I've written on my old blog and my old newsletters, and just clumped into one. And but when I published it, I added my recent article on Tag. It's called "All the Courage I Am Capable of: The Life of Colonel Hans Christian Haig, Commander of the Scandinavian Regiment." So I encourage you, if you have this book or want to get it, the chapter 1 is all about Hans Haig and, this Norwegian regiment of his, the 15th Wisconsin. And so it's an interesting story. And then he wrote this famous letter to his wife right before the battle. And he's saying, I could skim over a little bit here, but like, I have an opportunity to write a few words. We're 19 miles away from Chattanooga. We've been marching since I last wrote. Do not feel uneasy for me. I am well and in good spirits and trusting in my usual good luck. I shall use all the caution and courage I am capable of and leave the rest to take care of itself. Then he goes on to mention just how the rugged marches and the fatigues that they're going through. He mentions how their supplies are not with them yet. Let's see. He closes with, I can of course say nothing about the prospects of getting home, but as soon as this present campaign is ended, I am certain of being able to come. We have had such hard work marching over these mountains that we are entitled to some rest. The general will call and see you the first thing you know, probably surprise you. My love to the children. Goodbye, my darling, write often, but do not expect to hear from me very often till the campaign is over. Your own, Hans. And of course, he would be killed very shortly after that in the Battle of Chickamauga. But he is just a very interesting character, well worth reading into his life. Somebody
Absolutely.
published, I bought it recently, somebody published the letters of Hans Haig, which are really good. He was a very good writer. His story is amazing. And then there's a marker to where he was mortally wounded at Chickamauga,
really,
trying to rally his men.
He's really incredible. Him being an immigrant himself, who's coming over to America to learn English and going through all the kind of, difficulty getting into the American culture, and then becoming a anti-slavery man himself. I mean, becoming a very, very, very pronounced anti-slavery, anti-immigration, and
which is sad because his monument was going down.
Right. We no longer have a cool statue of the man who was actually against slavery, and the man being a poor immigrant himself coming to the nation. So he's a really cool figure.
And you
for that time,
you documented that, and your own sketch is hanging in my library over here, and it's in the book as well. You made a sketch of his final moments rallying the men before he took that fatal wound,
which he has
and that's a good sketch you did.
Thank you.
And
just a little sketch, but he really has a good ending with holding his men. We're doing so good down there, and encouraging his men. I mean, the accounts for him at the battle are pretty good.
There's some dramatic.
To my knowledge,
his doctor wrote a dramatic account of his final moments.
Are great. Him riding up and down the lines of his men, encouraging them, and just being 100% at the battle, being all that he can be, and just being just incredible with his men, and then of course getting paying for it with his life, but what an encouragement he was.
His equivalent to, and honestly, you could say my two favorite brigades to kind of read about at Chickamauga, and both had similar stories. Haig's brigade, but then also on the Confederate side, Benjamin Hardin Helm's brigade, which he was a brother-in-law of Abraham Lincoln. So both of these guys have interesting backgrounds. And then Helm, of course, is mortally wounded as well, and so these two brigade commanders,
that
fighting
is really interesting. They are really similar. It's pretty cool.
And they were both beloved by their men. And the Kentucky Orphan Brigade has a big story there. And so I have their book back here too. I should have just piled up every book I have on the subject in here. But but yeah, those two figures alone are worth looking into and studying more about, and because those are, not many commanding officers like that were killed at Chickamauga, but you had more brigade commanders than division or corps commanders take hits like that.
Was Lytle, was he a division commander or a brigade commander? Wasn't he a division?
He was a brigade commander. The poet, you mean? William Lytle?
Yeah.
Or is it Little or Lyle?
Lytle.
Lytle.
Or is that how you choose to pronounce it?
Well, he wrote "I Am Dying, Egypt Dying."
He's a brigade commander, first brigade
Mm-hmm.
in Sheridan's division.
Yeah, he was another. But again, all these brigade commanders that took a hit like that, they all had promising careers.
Yeah.
If they had survived,
a lot of good guys went down that day, which like most big ferocious days, you lose a lot of good men, and any man you lose is not good. Of course, so we know that these men, but a lot of, just like Gettysburg and Chickamauga, you have a lot of guys that go down fighting. Just that just shows you how intense the battle was and how much human loss.
The thing that's crazy, the most crazy thing out of this whole Chickamauga battle is of course the everything was the Federals were doing a pretty good job up until the point of when Wood's division moves and out of confusion, and they're trying to support the left side of the line, and then nobody fills the gap where they were, and sure enough, at the very same time when Longstreet's grand assault is going forward, they're hitting.
Yeah.
Or am I wrong? Wait, it wasn't.
No, that's Longstreet. Yeah. There's a big assault on the first day.
Yeah.
That Jefferson Davis, the Union Jefferson Davis, walks straight into, which is kind of like a sick peach orchard kind of thing. Like, he goes out in this eerie thing where he's going out to turn a flank, and he's sent out there and he walks straight into this grand assault. And then, that's down, I don't know, my names might be wrong, but is that down by the Vineyard Field? I want to say, anyway, that probably is wrong. But then, of course, you have the big Longstreet's assault that comes in as soon, and isn't it like that for things that happen that way? As soon as Woods pulls out, of course, the minute he pulls out, you have Longstreet's assault. That's literally walking through open ground, and just sweeps, and that's it, and that just kills it. Just a little move, which again, shows you just how difficult it was. If you imagine yourself in the shoes of guys back then who do not have Google Map and Google overhead of what's going on. I just mean, it's crazy. You're thinking of, and this is also really bad because this is a woods battle and you can't see the end of the battlefield from one end to the other. There's woods everywhere. You can't just look to your left and see, oh, well, what's happening there? It's not like a Napoleonic battle. All this confusion. So it's terrible. You live by it, you die by it. Later today we say, oh, what a stupid thing. What a stupid order. Why did he pull him out of that gap and throw him up there? It's also just always have to keep in mind the confusion, when these orders are made and stuff that you're dealing with. These commanding officers are sleep deprived. They're, everyone's hungry, everyone's tired, everyone's also worried about getting their head blown off. And they're having to make these difficult decisions when bullets flying everywhere. And I don't think any of us could really imagine that, sitting here in the nice studios, imagining the kind of decisions these guys had to make. On the field, and later we all say, "Oh, what a stupid commander! What a bad commander! Why did he do that?" I'm like, I always keep in mind that these kind of decisions these guys have to make in the smoke of battle, and sometimes they made really good success and put a lot of glory behind a guy's name, and then sometimes really almost dumb looking decisions, end up ruining one side or the other.
And speaking of these men who are doing the fighting, I thought about just highlighting a few units here. So this story is worth its own, but I'm going to bring up first, of course. Let's see. Yeah, trying to find it. Yeah, this is cool. This is cool. So, um, so me and Joey's Civil War ancestor is our great 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 grandfather Stephen Lunsford, and he was an artilleryman.
The
Yeah.
first.
He served in Kolb's battery, Kolb's Alabama artillery battery, and then he later transferred to the Eufaula light artillery on October 17th, 63, just a month after Chickamauga. So for the first half of the war, he fought with Kolb's battery, and the second half he fought with Eufaula. I had confusion for that back in it wasn't until later that we realized that he was in two different units. But still, I mean, it still counts. He had 5 brothers in like the same unit with him. But hold that thought. Later when we talk about visiting the battlefield, I'm going to share that. But fun fact, the Eufaula light artillery is mentioned in the official report of General William Bate. And again, I have this in my book, Civil War Regiments, and you can find this in the official records. But General Bate, this is how he concludes his report for Chickamauga. The Eufaula light artillery, commanded by Captain Oliver, had kept close to my infantry, notwithstanding the obstruction of a dense wood, took position inside the fortifications, and opened a rapid and destructive fire upon the retreating foe until the curtain of night closed upon the scene. I claim for this battery the honor of opening on Friday evening and closing on Sunday evening the Battle of Chickamauga. Wow. So our ancestors unit
what a
report.
My goodness.
But he's the only one who really says that, and right. So I'm gonna hold him to his word there, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, you never really know.
But to know that our ancestors unit could have fired the first and the last shots,
it's thought candy.
That's really cool to me. Yeah. And so we'll talk a little more about that in a minute. But I want to give a shout out to that.
That's quite a report. My goodness. It's a really cool report. Just the way.
I love reading the official records.
Really cool
official reports.
It's really cool.
So one maybe parting thing about the battle itself before we kind of talk about the battlefield and visiting it, because we had tons of stories about that. But and this is a Civil War Regiments podcast, and so I had accumulated. Side note, you can see here on set we have several books here. Shout out to our mutual friend here, Lewis Varnell of the History Company at Chickamauga, Fort Oglethorpe.
Great story.
He wrote a children's book called With Buford at Chickamauga, which is a cute book.
Beautiful
nice
illustrations
in there.
Very nice.
Joey can fix that while I'm talking.
You knocked over Gettysburg.
The movie Gettysburg.
How dare you?
Oh my also gosh. Here I have 2 of the volumes. The third one's elsewhere. But I have the Dave Powell Chickamauga trilogy, which to me is probably to date the most detailed study of the campaign. Also, the most detailed order of battle that you're going to find on the Chickamauga campaign.
Hey, and that's a good book, huh?
And I judge books by their order of battle. Yes. But I love how he has the casualties broken down by regiment in there. And so taking from that, in my book, Civil War Regiments, I had a couple of top 10 listings. And so I accumulated the list of the top 10 Union regiments with the highest casualties at Chickamauga, and the top 10 Confederate regiments with the most casualties at Chickamauga. So I thought I might read through this list as an honor roll of sorts, too, to kind of remember some of these units that were hit the hardest. And also, if you go visit Chickamauga, look up these units and look for their monuments or markers or brigade markers and where they fought. And so, starting with the Federal side, number 1 on the list is the 22nd Michigan, which we had mentioned. Of course, again, casualties in the Civil War include, it's not just killed, it's killed, wounded, missing, captured, right? So many times it counts. It all counts towards casualties here. And so in this case, many of these men could have been captured and not outright killed. But the 22nd Michigan went in with 455 men and they had 389 casualties. Second on the list is the 89th Ohio, which was also there. They had 389 engaged and 253 casualties. Next is the 9th Ohio, which I'm pretty sure was the Cincinnati Regiment. I think the 9th Ohio. They had 502 engaged, and they had 249 casualties. So that's 50% for them. Number 4 is the 14th Ohio. They had 460 engaged and 245 casualties. Fifth on the list is the 21st Ohio, which we also talked about. They had 561 engaged and 243 casualties. Number 6 is the 21st Illinois. They had 416 engaged and 238 casualties. Number 7 is the 96th Illinois. They had 419 engaged, 223 casualties. Number 8 is the 8th Kansas, and they were in Haig's Brigade. The 8th Kansas had 406 engaged and 220 casualties. Number 9 on the list is the 26th Ohio. They had 377 men, and 212 were casualties. And number 10, the 10th Wisconsin, had 240 engaged and 211 casualties.
God.
So they were hit. They may have been hit the hardest of any regiment at Gettysburg. They have a nice monument. It's the flag bearer.
Okay.
He's kind of at parade rest kind of thing.
Okay. What
it's a white kind of marble. It's oh man. Sorry, I'm
that's okay.
bad on the road names.
You know
it's,
what?
It's near the front.
They were in.
I pulled up.
Are they in Baird's or
Order of Battle here? So random other fact here is they pulled up the wrong one. I was trying to pull up. So I got to recreate the 10th Wisconsin at a living history.
Really? Wow.
We did an event, which that's a whole topic on its own. The amount of times I portrayed a unit at Chickamauga. They were in Baird's division, Scribner's Brigade.
Okay.
Their colonel was John Eli, and he was mortally wounded and captured.
Mm.
They were commanded by a captain by the end of the battle, Captain Jacob Roby.
They got hit hard.
But the 10th Wisconsin, so we did an event called Rosecrans Pursuit, which was about the lead up to the Chickamauga battle. And we portrayed the 10th Wisconsin, which was like, for a lot of those guys, their final moments before fighting the battle. So it was kind of a campaign maneuver event that we did. But I have done a lot of living histories at Chickamauga over the years, both sides. I did the Orphan Brigade there one year. We recreated the Orphan Brigade. One time we did A.P. Stewart's division. We recreated the A.P. Stewart's Little Giant division. I know I did another one as the 23rd Tennessee out there.
Is that the 10th Wisconsin?
No.
Okay.
I think that's the 9th Ohio, actually. I can pull up a picture of it. It's a famous one.
There it is.
That's it.
That's it.
Yeah, show it for the camera a little bit. Oh, wait a minute.
That one right there.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the 10th Wisconsin.
Yeah, it's a very good monument.
Yeah.
So I would so encourage to, of course, visit that one. Visit the whole battlefield, but visit that one and visit, the boys up on
Snodgrass Hill.
Horseshoe Ridge and Snodgrass Hill, especially those two Ohio regiments, 21st and 89th, and then 22nd Michigan, and then the 10th Ohio.
I will say this. So to run down the list of the top 10 Confederate regiments with the most casualties, you'll notice, very rare, but you'll notice that at Chickamauga there are a lot of regimental monuments to Confederate regiments, particularly Georgia regiments, but you don't really get that anywhere else. It's usually just markers, brigade markers, but there are a lot of markers for Confederate regiments at Chickamauga. So Tennessee, Georgia especially, they all have individual monuments. So that's different. That's kind of different compared to some. That's why I feel like Chickamauga is drowning in monuments sometimes because they're really everywhere. And then, of course, when you have a battle, a multiple days battle, they have several markers for one regiment showing you where they fought on each day. So, but here's the list here of the top 10 regiments. We have number 1, the 18th Alabama had 527 engaged, 295 casualties. The 16th Alabama had 414 engaged and 243 casualties. Number 3 on the list is the combined 10th and 19th South Carolina. They had 686 engaged, 236 casualties. Number 4 is the combined 6th and 9th Tennessee. They had 368 engaged, 211 casualties. Number 5 is the 22nd Alabama. They had 371 engaged, 205 casualties. Number 6 is the 19th Alabama. They had 515 men and 204 casualties. Number 7 is the 3rd South Carolina. They had 343 engaged and 202 casualties. Number 8 is the combined 5th and 13th Arkansas. They had 450 engaged, 201 casualties. Number 9 is the 63rd Tennessee. They had 402 engaged and 200 casualties. And finally, number 10 on the list is the combined 17th, 18th, 24th, and 25th Texas, which combined had 767 engaged and 198 casualties. So that's the top 10 Union and Confederate regiments with the highest casualties at Chickamauga. And so we touched a little bit about the battle, points of the battle that stick out to us, some of the individuals that stuck out to us. In fact, let me pull it up too. One more individual that deserves a shout out.
And honored all those guys, all those top 10 guys, honored them for, especially the regiments that got hit the hardest, and honored all the regiments, of course, that fought and all the men that were involved in that battle.
Exactly. And so
what does this make this year? Does this make one? This isn't 160, is it?
It is. Yeah, that's why we're doing this.
Oh, nice.
160th anniversary.
No way. Happy anniversary. Wow.
So one more individual that deserves a shout out, and I'm going to hold the picture up here a little bit. I might share it. I'll share the link.
Oh, is that the guy?
To him.
I've got him in a book.
It's Jacob Miller of I believe it's the 9th Indiana. Private Jacob Miller was shot in the face during the Battle of Chickamauga. And this picture that you can find, if you look up Private Jacob Miller, 9th Indiana, he's literally got a hole in his forehead. And maybe there's a picture in your book there. But let's see. He has a quote here. Lee White actually shared a post from the National Museum of Civil War Medicine. There you go. Let's hold that up for a minute. So this is what he said. I stopped a full charge of lead consisting of 1 round ball and 3 buckshot between the eyes, passing to the left under the frontal bone, crushing my left eye out of the cavity well. I thought I was done for. And Private Miller was shot in the face during the Battle of Chickamauga on September 19th, 1863. He would amusingly write years later that if it were possible for me to meet the deluded enemy that shot me, I should congratulate him on being a center shot, for that gives me the nickname of center shot. So it's a crazy image when you look it up and see.
It's amazing this man did not die.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. And but so he's one more individual that's always worth naming out of the Chickamauga campaign. And so, wow, time is going by. We've been talking for a while, but to wrap up things too, we really need to talk a lot about our visits. And
yes, which tying out for a long time, I was thinking of whether to talk about our visits or talk about our favorite monuments and then visits. But I say that they're both going to tie into each other, whether we like it or not. We're going to start talking about one thing, and so we'll combine both of them to favorite trips, and we'll be mentioning parts of the battlefield that we like visiting and favorite monuments and stuff like that.
So I should go first just because of the nostalgia here. But
you went there before I did.
Yeah.
You've gone there.
Yeah, you were only 2 years old the first time I went. So I went the first time in 2004 with my dad and a bunch of my friends. So I believe it was summertime 2004. Yeah, and actually, I'm sorry. No, that was the second time I went. Sorry, I'm getting myself confused. It was earlier that same year, I believe, that my whole family went, and we all just did a quick tour. And I remember it was getting dark, and we were driving down. I believe it's the Alexander's Bridge Road. That's where the Alabama Monument is, the Alabama Memorial. And so we got out of the car to go see the Alabama Monument. And we knew, I had known about the Eufaula artillery. My dad had told me growing up that I was related. I had an ancestor that fought with that unit. And I'll never forget, like, I was already crazy even as a kid running around, taking pictures of monuments and things. And I remember we were about to jump in a car. Everybody was hungry. It was getting late. The park was about to close. And I went to go look at the Alabama Monument. And then I decided, well, I'm going to go walk across. I saw this one marker for an artillery battery, and I was like, I'm going to go check that out. And I'll never forget just the feeling I had when I walked around the corner and I see the plaque and it says Eufaula Light Artillery. And for me, like, my jaw just dropped, and I was just like, couldn't believe it. And I just stood there, and like my family was hollering at me, and I was shocked. I remember just like, kind of like motioning, like, everybody get over here. And all of us were all mutually excited, and my dad was. I remember I got a picture right then and there, and I was just beaming from ear to ear because I just couldn't, like, for the first time in my love of history, I had a real connection. Like, and now I know in hindsight that my direct ancestor may not have been at that exact spot, but all I needed to hear back then as a kid getting that initial interest is, oh my gosh, like, my ancestor could have been right here. Which, by the way, his name is Stephen Lunsford. My name is Stephen Lunsford. So I was just like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And couldn't believe it. So immediately I just couldn't always, like, I have to stop over there every time I go to Chickamauga because that means so much to me, that spot, that location. And I love it. Yeah, that's one of my favorite little corners right there. But and not far from there is where Kolb's battery's marker is, and where he probably would have been. But he had brothers in the Eufaula artillery, so there's still blood there. But that was a highlight moment for me the very first time. And I remember, a few months later, I went back with a bunch of friends, and I couldn't wait to show them that. And I remember when I took my friends up there, we all brought our wooden Winchester like toy guns and or those old David Crockett guns. I mean, and we had our Civil War keppies, and we ran all over the battlefield shooting each other, doing fighting, our own little reenactments, And so for the first few times I went to Chickamauga, it was kind of like that, just going and running around and having a good time, and not really seriously. It was many years later, really until after I became a reenactor and stuff, that I went back to kind of take my time there. And then I started like photographing every monument there, which I still haven't. I still need to go back and do more. But that's, as I grew more of an appreciation. Then I started watching documentaries and understanding all the different things and studying more, reading more about it. And it really deserves a lot more attention than it gets. But I know I want to really hear your stories too, because
it's definitely not as beloved as, like, just Gettysburg has all the nostalgia with it. It's got the movie. It's just got like, when you hear Gettysburg, you just go, Gettysburg. It's like no one is going, Chickamauga. Like most people are like, Chickamauga. Anyway, you know that. Oh man.
So tell us about some of your earliest memories, and then going into some of your more fond recent memory.
The my explanation of the story is basically very similar to yours. From going there, from my first memory of going there, I don't know if I went when I was young, but the memory I have of going there for the first time was several years ago. Going with you. You took me and the fellas up there.
Yeah.
And we had this just bro trip that we went up there. And of course, it was many years ago. And at the time, I was just excited to go on a bro trip, and just hang out. And we went up to the history company, get some models, and, do some shopping up there and hang out and have good food and run around the battlefield and, be crazy and stuff. So I was like, there's no thought whatsoever of the battlefield, but it was just cool because I was like, oh, cool stuff. And we watched the movie up there, went to the museum. So that was just a fun day. And that was pretty early on. And then the next time, I want to say was, I believe, just me and you went to go to the history company primarily. So I have to say that most of the Chickamauga trips were based on when we needed to go to the history company, or when said little brother wanted to go to a history company to get models, to get some plastic soldiers. So that's how it was. It's like, oh, if we go to the history company, then we can go to the Chickamauga battlefield, okay, look around a little,
yeah.
And always a great excuse. So the next time I had gone was many years after the first time me and you went, and I want to say that was the time, and I was much older. This was only maybe a handful of years ago, not long. You told me the story about the Heg story. Like, I'd never heard of that before, and so I picked up on a few things. Oh, there goes Lewis's book. All right. Anyway, so that was the first time that I learned some interesting things about the battlefield. Then, like, when you took me to the place where he was mortally wounded. That was interesting. And there were some specific monuments that you wanted to take pictures of. And it was really hot that day. And we were just kind of like, get in the car, get back in the car, get out, take a picture. And I was just kind of like, I was just there for the history company, man. And so that was the next time. And the following time after that, we went 3 years ago. Has it already been 3 years? 2 years? Maybe 2 years in the winter. Remember when we went up?
Yeah,
we went up with family friends. I took a good buddy with me. Shout out to Grant, War Chat. We went up there doing some vlogging on the battlefield. We went up in the winter. It was early January.
Was that right before COVID? Or was that January 21 that we went up?
January 21.
Okay.
It was already post-COVID. Because me and my buddy Grant would graduate just a couple months later from high school. So we went up there, and it was cold, but not too bad. It was overcast, cloudy winter day, and all the leaves are gone, so it was very open. You could see a little more. So it's kind of cool to go there in the winter time when all the leaves are gone and you just see everything a little better. The monuments, everything's a little more open. Sort of. I say that, and some people are like, you don't know. I don't. So you go whenever you want to, but it is nice in winter because it gets very hot down here, and especially Chickamauga, and just get insane hot. So if you're gonna go in the summer, just be prepared. You'll deal with it. It's fine. But me and him went, and we just, we were older. We were about to graduate high school, and we were just there to vlog about our history channel, history podcast, and we're just kind of fooling around. And he had not been there. So it was really kind of showing him around and stuff, and we were just goofing around. Nothing really serious. Didn't for once think twice about anything above the battle, just any details about the battle or anything like that. Just saw, of course, the Eufaula place. I took him there. Of course, that's the popular place because it's a monument to our family, and the Alabama monument and stuff like that. And of course, at the end, the Snodgrass Hill, the Tiger Monument, but no detail. And so it was last summer, a year ago,
I was in Gettysburg.
The weekend of the anniversary. It was, July 4th weekend. We had a long weekend off of work. Yeah, my sister, you three took the road trip up to Gettysburg. You were doing the first
Minnesota event, yeah.
That big, the glorious event, the magical event. And so me and my dad marooned down at our workplace because we had, our workplace inventory was taking place that the Friday before, and we had to stay and for work and stuff. So we didn't go. You guys planned a long trip up there to go, but me and my dad stayed behind. And so I had a really good buddy. Shout out to BS Brian. He hadn't been to Chickamauga in a long time. And I want to say he hadn't been in a long time, or he hadn't been at all. I'm not sure. BS Brian texted me. Anyway, I was like, he was home from college, and I was like, I want to do something fun. Like, let's do something down here. Everyone else went up to Gettysburg. We're marooned down here. Let's do something interesting. Me and my dad didn't have any plans. And so I'm like, I'm gonna get a group together and let's go to Chickamauga. Let's go visit the battlefield. I was like, I don't know. I just had a feeling, kind of I was getting the fever because the Gettysburg fever was hot and ripe because of our big trip that we spoke about in our Gettysburg episode not long ago. We talked about the magical Gettysburg senior trip, and so that was in the back of my mind. So I have to mention that Gettysburg senior trip was a magical trip and kind of transformed my knowledge of Gettysburg, and it also transformed how I looked at battlefields, how I appreciated things more. So that is when I changed. And now I was like, wow, like I haven't been to Chickamauga. Like I had a whole new outlook, and I'm like, I need to go to Chickamauga. Like I want to go there. It's so close to us. Like this is like Gettysburg, and it's only 2 hours away. So I'm like, I'm gonna round up my dad and some buddies. Megan and Grant could not participate. But we went up with some just a couple of us, and we went up in the summer day on a Saturday. And we went up early and went up there. And what I had done on the week following up to it, what I had done is I had already been familiar with the American Battlefield Trust, and they had uploaded their Chickamauga videos, and they had a great animated battle map video that's on there that I began to watch. So I watched that video. I was watching many history videos. At that time, I was heavily watching Epic History TV on the Napoleonic Wars and stuff, and I was headlong into that. And I started watching the American Battlefield Trust animated battle map, which was really helpful. And so I looked it up, and I was like, I'm gonna watch the Chickamauga one to start. I'm gonna refresh my brain about what happened to the battlefield, whatever. And so, here I was in a weeknight leading up to it, making notes, watching the video, making notes about all the key points of the battlefield, what I wanted to visit. And that video is where I discovered the heroic stand of the 22nd Michigan, the 21st and 89th Ohio, which are highlighted shortly in that video. And from right then, I was like, I want to go see those guys. I want to go find their monuments, where they're at. So I had that written down. I had all the key points of the battle written down, the play-by-play of what happened to the battle, a general source. And so we got up there early, and of course went to the museum and experienced that, watched the movie and everything. And I was like, I need to get a book. I really wanted a guide. I just wanted a map of the battlefield. That's really what I wanted. Like I thought I'd just get like a free battlefield map just to show you like where everything is, but they didn't have those. And they did have something like it, but it wasn't any good. And you also had to pay for it. And I'm like, what? And so in their gift shop, I'm looking around all their books, and I see this handy little book, Chickamauga Field Guide. Nothing super special or impressive, but I found it, and I was like, that's what I'm looking for. And I started flipping through it, and I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, it's an interesting little book. It's really an interesting little book. Other people can say whatever, but just for me at my time, it was a really cool looking book. I mean, and then you know it's a cool book when I'm comparing
maps, right?
when I'm comparing it to something you would like.
Mm-hmm.
So Junior here was like, oh my gosh, I'm flipping through the book and I see, a little order of battle and the different, who's Van Cleef got, he's got, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And so it has all these.
It's a beginner. It's a starter.
It's a very, very cool.
You read that before you get into these like 400-page bad boys right here.
This is just a great little play-by-play of the sections of the battle, and I'm like, this will help me. And so with map in hand, with my trusty little book here in hand, I tackled the battlefield. I felt it was, I felt the Gary Adelman. I felt the spirit. It's a spirit. It's the Gary Adelman is a feeling.
You carry that with you.
It was a perfect pocketbook. It's thin, and the spirit of Gary Adelman was with me, and I was like, let's go for it. And so we we started the Florida Monument where the big Breckenridge assault was at. We checked all that out and went basically down all the way down to the line, down to all the way down, of course, to the Lytle Brigade tower, climbed up the tower and everything, and made a big loop. And being in the summer heat, it was deadly. But it did start raining on us at one point, and so we're out there getting soaked in rain, but it was pretty refreshing.
Yeah.
So it was just a really fun day. Made a lot of great memories, and this book, it was just magical. Just a really magical experience.
Yeah.
With this book, and just learning, it was like my eyes were open to the battlefield, and all of a sudden it was like Gettysburg was here, just 2 hours away from me. All of a sudden the monuments are just so much more impressive. It really taken more time to learn about them. Like, oh my gosh. I'm leaving. The last thing we saw was, of course, we did it in order. So the last thing we saw was Snodgrass Hill and Horseshoe Ridge. I'll leave that till the last. So the monuments that that I remember that are just, Chickamauga has really cool monuments. It's really cool monument. And I'm here for the sculptures and figure statues. So it's the 79, one of my favorite is the 79th Pennsylvania monument, which is a really, really cool statue. And I brought from home my handy little photo book with the pictures that I took of the battlefield, and that's the first one that comes to mind. Is that statue with the guy raising the flag? I mean, just a beautiful, beautiful statue. And I want to say, correct me, isn't the second Minnesota, is that on Horseshoe Ridge?
It's on Snodgrass Hill.
Snodgrass Hill. Okay, I thought so. I thought for a minute if that was off. I'm saving that till later, but of course that is a beautiful monument. And of course the 10th Wisconsin is a cool monument. All the Union Cavalry monuments, are very cool.
Oh, that's them.
Yeah. Very cool stuff. And so we took the whole turn of going all the course of the battle. I had the book with me, and so each field that we went to, I would talk a little about what happened to the field, and this book was really helpful to show where point the assaults were and stuff. Got to see the Kelly field, took pictures of that, which is just like the wheat field basically. These fields are like changing hands. That the Kelly field like changed hands like more than 5 times throughout the days. Really just hot contested clearings. And so right before we got to the Horseshoe Ridge portion of Snodgrass Hill, it actually started turning really dark. It had rained on us earlier, but not too bad. But this time it was thundering and it was lightning and it was starting to look pretty dirty.
Yeah.
And so we knew, of course, the history company was going to take a part in this. So we say, let's leave the battlefield and let's just call it that. And I've gotten in the back of my mind, I'm like, dang, like this is the point that I've been waiting for. The Horseshoe Ridge is what I've been waiting to get up there to take pictures of the monuments, take pictures of the 22nd Michigan, 21st and 89th Ohio. I got to see them. I got to pay those guys tribute. And So, but I'm like, whatever. Let's just go check out the history company. My buddy hadn't been there before, and I'm like, we're gonna enjoy that. So we actually loved the battlefield. Gave them good shopping there, and found a lot of great stuff. And it poured down rain. That was some hardest rain while we were in there. And luckily, we got out of there. Got off the battlefield first. But sure enough, the rain stopped. After it monsooned, it stopped, and the sun came out. And that we were, up to that point, we were so miserable, but coming into the air conditioning, just taking it cool for a little bit, was nice. And then when it stopped raining, when the sun came out, it just changed the day. We went back to the battlefield, and it's like everything was, of course, wet, but the way after the rain, when the sun comes out, just everything's just like sparkling and like glowing.
Yeah.
And so I have an amazing picture. We drove back to the battlefield, and we go straight to Horseshoe Ridge, and we go up there, and I got a great picture of the line of grass that has the 22nd Michigan, the 21st Ohio, 89th Ohio that are in that line. You have this long regimental row, if you call it that, Horseshoe Ridge. The ridge itself is beautiful the way it's set up. It's got cannons up there, and it's got a long walkway that you can walk up and down to see where the line of defense was. And we walked up there, and the way the sun was gleaming through the trees, this is late afternoon, was just beautiful. Everything was like just glowing and sparkling, and it felt amazing. The coolness of the air. We had just experienced this just muggy, terrible summer day, and all of a sudden it was just like this breezy, just beautiful weather. So we got to experience the last point of the battlefield and just amazing weather. And there we go. I'm charging down there, and I find I'm taking pictures. I found them. I found the 21st Ohio and the 89th Ohio and the 22nd Michigan. Which cool fun fact. I know Turchin, a couple of those regiments were in his brigade. Am I right? I want to say the 89th Ohio, 21st Ohio were in his brigade. Turchin was a Russian-born Union commander, which is kind of cool. I don't know too much more about him, but I do know that some of his men had seen a lot of action, especially on the first day, doing a big counterattack at a point of the first day. Please reference the American Battlefield Trust animated battle map to see more about that.
I'll put that in the show notes there.
Yes, yeah, it's really cool to see that. So that's just an interesting fact about him. But of course, the Tiger Monument on Snodgrass Hill is so cool. And it was just this real fulfillment. I felt the same fulfillment there that I spoke of going to Cemetery Hill at Gettysburg, where that's just like, it's just amazing. You got the Hancock and the Howard statue up there, and it's just like so impressive. And then so going to Snodgrass Hill and Horseshoe Ridge, you just have this impressive point where there's so much honor to that point that you know that there was a real stand right here. And so what I mentioned earlier, what I'll mention now, is what it is missing. It's missing a General Thomas statue.
We'll start raising money.
Start raising. I'd love to see some campaign started for a big old Thomas statue.
What about just a big rock? Just put a big.
That's true. That also would be really cool.
Just put a big boulder,
big bronze rock would actually be kind of cool if you want to go like artsy with it. But to have like what you mentioned earlier, like a Lee at Gettysburg Monument would be an equestrian statue of him, and then below him, highlighting some of those units that made the last stand there would just take that whole area of the battlefield to a next level. But it's still cool. Yeah. It's beautiful the way it is, and those things are expensive, and no one's going to pay for it now. So,
I know.
That is all I have to say about it. And ever since then, that was just been a golden trip. A really awesome day, and I'll remember that. And I still got my handy book with me. I kept that along and stuff. So just a lot of fun memories are made, and it was great.
Oh yeah. Well, we'll definitely. We need to go back again soon. Then. Sooner than later, maybe make another trip up there. Yeah. But we've gone a little over time, so we probably should wrap up this discussion of the Chickamauga anniversary special. I'm glad we were able to do this because we did it for Gettysburg, and I thought even back then I was like, we probably need to do this for Chickamauga too. So that was good.
Well, this is the next battlefield that we do have a connection
Yeah,
to.
we do. We do have.
We did make a
bigger
lot of
than-
memories
bigger than
with
others.
Chickamauga. We don't really have as much memories with the other battlefields. Just personal family memories. We made a lot of trips to Gettysburg and Chickamauga.
And I want to go back. Yeah, I'm ready to go back.
Go
because,
yourselves.
well, the problem is this
research about
weekend,
it and
I'm going to the reenactment, but you never have time to go to the battlefield when you're going to the reenactment. So I want to go back again soon just to take my time looking at everything. Shout out last weekend. The park had all the anniversary living histories last week. Some friends of mine did 4 Florida and 2nd Minnesota living histories.
Oh, they did
Shout
the
out to
2nd
them.
Minnesota.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
that's cool.
I think they got some bad weather or they got some rain up there.
I would
But
so recommend go visit the battlefield, especially people down here that are closer to home. If you're not close to Gettysburg, go and visit it. It's a beautiful battlefield.
or anytime during the month of September, we're almost winding down here, but you're still here during the anniversary.
Yes.
So anytime you go this year, be sure to pay a visit to it.
And I would totally recommend is learning about it, reading up on it before you go. It's kind of like what I did. I don't want to plug the way I did it. Some people are different, but definitely read and understand it first. And then when you go, you really appreciate it more. And of course, watch the movie there. But I wouldn't go there and start learning as you're going. Learn some before you go, so when you do go, you'll really appreciate it more and say, wow, like this is it.
And I know I'm going to dive in when I can into the 4 volumes over here hidden behind Joey here, the official records of the Chickamauga Chattanooga campaign, because I'm winding down on my Gettysburg Order Battle series. I still have a ways to go, but I'm kind of looking forward to being done with that because I really want to dive into a Chickamauga Order Battle series. It's going to be my next really big project. And I know as I do that, I'm going to be learning Chickamauga as I'm going, even more deep diving. And so for my own sake, I look forward to diving into that project to enhance my knowledge on the campaign. But everyone, I want to thank everyone for listening. Check out some of the resources we mentioned. I'll put it all in the show notes as usual. And but I hope you give some recognition and some time to Chickamauga this year. Check it out. Go visit if you've never been, or read up on it if you've never read on it. And it deserves all the attention because it's one of the biggest and bloodiest battles, the bloodiest in the West.
So big shout out to, of course, the boys who fought it. To especially the boys who got killed, especially to the boys who totally maimed for the rest of their lives by it. For all the guys who made it out, who didn't make it out, total honor to them. And you honor them by visiting. We say, oh, I'll go visit. Well, why? You're going to visit because it's a cemetery. I mean, you're going to visit just to honor the guys who went through it, to fight for what they thought was right. So you really, you do it for them. That's the only reason you do. You just go visit, and take your pictures and do your reading and studying to learn more about the guys who had to participate in something so great as this battle.
All right, there you have it. So, yeah, please give it its recognition that it's due. And until then, guys, stay tuned. We're wrapping up kind of close to the end of this season. There might be a few more episodes before we wrap it up this year, but we're winding down. It's getting towards the holiday season, and so it's been a really fun season. Go back and check out the episodes we've done already. Check them out if you're road tripping this weekend. Listen to some of the past episodes. So until then, guys, I thank you all for listening. Please subscribe to the podcast, and I look forward to more content in the future. But until then, good night, everybody.